my fears on my wings of faith. I now believe I can fly. Introduction. Throughout this wonderful book, you will find words in bold and underlined. For these words, you will find the definitions in the back of the book for understanding and in the order as they appear in the text. The R7, which is Rising 7 approach, is defined in the back of the book as well. Now let's begin. As a child, I have always been fascinated with flight. I recall jumping off the porch stomps, flapping my arms in the air, trying to fly. I even recall swinging in the swings real high in our neighborhood playground and then jumping out of the swing over the fence, trying to remain suspended in the air. But guess what? Gravity always won. I also love to watch the superhero Mighty Isis on television. She would say, "Upper winds which blow on high, lift me now so I may fly." And she would turn in a whirlwind position and be lifted up, and she would take flight. I would sit in awe and desire so badly to be able to fly and soar like her. Let us not forget my girl Wonder Woman in her invisible plane. I wanted a plane just like hers. I had declared within myself that I was going to become a superhero who would fly too. Reflecting on those moments sparked a desire to find out what Webster had to say about the word fly. Wow, to be so free to let the wind take you away. Have you ever watched a piece of paper be blown in the air by the wind? Could you feel it floating on the currents, on the waves of the wind? Oh, how peaceful it would be to just float and be carried through the air. No real effort of your own, just fly, glide, and soar. Well, all of that sounds great. Seems great and would be great. But as I begin to grow and understand more about being airborne, I had to accept the fact that I could only physically fly in an airplane, a visible airplane, not Wonder Woman's plane. With this realization, I became less fascinated with the thought of flight. I actually went the total opposite way and developed a fear of flying that was beyond my mind's control. I began to view the airplane as a limitation, something that would box me in. Even though I would be in flight, I felt I would be restricted, somehow confined. I did not want to fly in those conditions. It became terrifying to even think of being carried by anything in the air, especially a plane. I refused to go on my senior class trip because they were flying to the Bahamas. After wanting so desperately as a child to experience flight, to soar through the clouds into the stratosphere, I began to allow fear to rob me of having that first experience during a stage in my life when I was supposed to be young and daring. There was no hesitation, no afterthought about my decision to skip the trip. I was not going to think it over, consider the possibility of having fun on this senior trip, or even attempt to convince myself that it would be okay and I could possibly survive the experience. I simply feared flying, and that was that. I constantly told myself I could not fly, would not fly, and should not fly. I had convinced myself that if I went on in a plane, the plane was going to fall out the sky. Believing this premise, I also knew I could never stay suspended in the air when I tried so hard as a child, so I knew I was going down with the plane and would die. For many years, I refused to entertain the thought of going on any trips that involved flying. If I could not get there by car, train, foot, or ship, I was not going. I was able to avoid flying for a while, but the rubber meeting the road experience was very near. I was a young woman moving up in a company, climbing the corporate ladder, and then boom, Miss Corporate America was assigned to go to a conference in Minneapolis, Minnesota, flying on American Airlines. I begged my supervisor to let me go on the train, but she said the conference would be over by the time I would arrive. She said I had to fly. Okay, I'm saying in my mind, she must be insane. She wants me to fly for the first time by myself on an airplane? Does she not understand I don't fly? Can she not comprehend I ain't going out like that? I wrestled with this over and over. I could not sleep. I repeatedly tried to get out of it, but the day of reckoning came and I had to go to the airport. I generally do not perspire, but I was sweating bullets, and it was a fairly cold day in November. I got on the plane and they set me by a window. I reached for that shutter and slammed that thing down so fast it made a loud sound. The stewardess came by and asked me, "Was everything okay?" I replied, "Oh, yes. I just prefer not to look out of the window." And she replied, "And miss the beautiful scenery?" Then I replied loudly, "It'll be there whether I look or not. It's not going anywhere, so I won't miss a thing." She smiled and moved on. The plane began to taxi down the runway, and I began to hold my breath like I was going to take a dive underwater. The plane lifted off, and I grabbed hold to the arms of the seat so tight I made imprints in my hands. During the entire flight, you would have thought a ghost was sitting beside me. My face told of my terror and turmoil inside. I was absolutely terrified, bordering being petrified. The stewardess would come by and check on me because they were very concerned. It probably was amazing to them to see me look so flushed. I finally got to my destination and took the rest of the day to calm myself down and try to forget how I arrived in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I made it through the conference, but oh no, another day of reckoning was a coming. I realized I had to get back on the plane to get home. My drama began upon my arrival to the Minnesota airport. I ran through the airport like a maniac. As I was pulling my luggage cart, it was running over people's feet and their luggage they had in the aisles. I am certain people thought I was insane, but guess what? I did not care. I boarded the airplane, and this time I was sweating cannons. Again, they set me by a window, and I replayed the same character in the scene coming to the conference. But this time I went a little further out there. When we hit air pockets, experienced turbulence, I literally cried. I told the stewardess I was ready to get off the plane, but they said it would not be a pretty sight if they opened the door and let me off at that moment. They begged me to take deep breaths and relax. The stewardess offered me the barf bag, and I used it to cover my eyes. It is amazing how fear can cause us to look and act so silly and stupid without even caring how many people see us or even what they think of us. Well, I did make it through, vowing never to fly again. How long did I keep that vow? Well, not very long. My wonderful company sent me to Orlando, Florida, Miami, Florida, San Francisco, California, all on, you guessed it, the airplane. These were the worst of times for me, but no one seemed to care. You see, it was much more than hating to fly. I just did not believe I could fly and survive the experience. I believed that either the plane was going to drop and I would die, or I would have a heart attack on the plane trying to live through the flight. Thank the Lord, neither happened. But I had allowed my fear of flying to multiply to the 10th degree. I resigned from that job, not because they made me fly, but it was time to move on, full steam ahead towards my destiny. I thought I had gotten away from airplane flights, but somehow I ended up on a plane to Kansas for a job interview. I was not as shaky, but I experienced a great deal of anxiety. This was exactly what I had experienced a few years prior on my airplane rides, major anxiety. A few years after my Kansas trip, oh no, not again. But yes, I am in the air on my way to Bahamas. Now remember, this is the place I refused to go to with my senior class, and now I was en route on a plane with my church. They said I looked like someone who was stoned. Not to be offensive. My eyes were pretty big without drama, but they became extremely large and bug-eyed during the flight to Bahamas and back. It did not matter that I was on a plane with others I knew and trusted. A lack of faith and a load of fear did not allow me to find comfort in their presence because the discomfort was within me. So I allowed these words to be pumped into my psyche. I do not believe I can fly, even though it was proven that I had done it and survived it. Still, it did not register that I could believe I can fly and that my flights could actually be enjoyable instead of fear ridden, full of anxiety and stressful. I did not allow the positive to overthrow the negative. One might say, but you flew. You got on the plane. It could not have been that bad. Well, think about the many times we have done things afraid, without our minds nor our hearts in it, just going through the motions because others beckoned or forced us to do it. We did not do it freely. We were bound in fear. So it was done by going through the motion, not by us freely causing the motion. Lord, make me so uncomfortable that I will do the very thing that I fear. Quote, Ruby D. To help me gain a revelatory understanding of flight, the process of preparing for flight, and the free will and the essence of flight, I was enrolled in the Creature School of Flight. I was led to study the butterfly, a graceful creature of flight, and the eagle, a majestic creature of flight. In this study, I began to parallel my human development with these creatures made by God. Amazingly enough, I discovered that I could not only believe I could fly, but also gain an understanding of how and why. I learned from the smaller creature, the butterfly, is one of the most fascinating and beautiful insects in the world. Its metamorphosis from a caterpillar to a beautiful creature of flight has captured the attention of many people from all walks of life. They possess a delicate beauty and a gracefulness. Now, the larger creature, the eagle, is known to be one of the most powerful birds in the world. They can soar high in the air for hours without flapping their wings. Because of this, eagles have been a symbol of freedom and power. They are bold and majestic. Their gliding on the wind thermals is like wow. We all know that human beings are the greatest of all creatures on earth. We are wonderfully and beautifully made. Receiving this revelation and understanding, one should be prompted to proclaim, look what God has made. Chapter 1, the beginning. Stages of the butterfly and the eagle are comparable to the stages of human beings, but as human beings, we can learn from the creatures of flight. Charles Darwin first argued in 1871 that species tend to evolve attributes and behaviors that enhance courtship and thus reproductive success. The butterfly meets, woos, and wins their mates with seductive signals and clever strategies. Now, once the male and the female butterfly have noticed one another, courtship begins. Okay. And the female butterfly has about 100 eggs inside of her. And when she's ready to lay her egg, she will perform a kind of self fertilization. And when she places an egg on a host plant, as the egg is passing out of her ovipositor, it will pass the spermatozoa, which will fertilize the egg and determine its sex. Of the 100 eggs that may be laid, only 2% should be expected to survive to become healthy and reproductive adult butterflies. But those that do survive are well on their way to becoming something very beautiful and remarkable. On the other hand, eagles reach sexual maturity at around 4 or 5 years of age. Once they find their mate, they mate. The female lays from 1 to 3 eggs annually. Both the male and female share in the incubation duties. During incubation, one parent is always on the nest, not only to keep the eggs warm, but also to protect them from predators that will break open and eat the egg. If 3 eggs are laid, generally 2 make it through to incubation. After incubation, the eggs hatch in the order in which they were laid. Now, from the beginning, as we know it to be, the human mating process starts out as a process of emotions, which are physical and emotional, more physical for men, more emotional for women. Once established within the mind, spirit, and soul of the beings, they are manifested physically with an initial connection by the senses of hearing, seeing, and touching. Interest in potential mating partners is heavily influenced by sensory cues. Just a note here. Not all of these connections are ordained by love, so do not get confused with having sex versus experiencing love. Experiencing love is beyond the physical. It is a higher connection of the mind, spirit, and soul in which two become one, preferably in the context of marriage. It is scientific fact that human females have 4 million eggs released within their womb in a lifetime. The sperm hunts out one egg out of millions to fertilize and becomes a you or a me. We develop in a womb, and a placenta lines the uterine wall and partially envelops the fetus, to which it is attached by the umbilical cord, giving nourishment to the fetus. From the beginning, we can relate to the creatures of flight. We all have a mating ritual that is first sensory. Signals are sent back and forth from male to female. From these sensory signals, a physical act is performed, which produces some form of conception and fertilization of eggs. All three, the butterfly, the eagle, the human being, are formed from eggs. Why eggs to start life? Well, the egg consists of an embryo surrounded by nutrient material with protective covering. Why an egg? Because an egg nurtures. Yes, in human beings, the egg grows in the womb, which then attaches to a placenta via the umbilical cord. The placenta, partially enveloping the fetus, which is no longer an egg, is connected by the umbilical cord and now provides the nutrient materials for survival and growth. We glean from these creatures of flight their ability to realize that the nutrients of the egg, as well as the incubation process, plays heavy on the organism's outcome and success. Therefore, they protect the beginning of life as much as they can. I realize that not only must human beings be mindful of protecting the beginning of the egg and incubation process when it is time to reproduce another of our kind, but we must be mindful of the beginning of the egg and incubation process of our beliefs. As we journey through life, we are wooed by many beliefs of who we are, what we are, where we are going, and who we will become. These beliefs are shelled in an egg of our psyche. In the province of the mind, what one believes to be true either is true or becomes true. A quote from John Lilly. In the psyche, these beliefs are hoping to receive nutrients and protection from our mind, soul, and spirit. But if we are unaware that the power of God resides within our mind, soul, and spirit to nurture and grow these beliefs into a physical reality and manifestation, we will allow the predators of negativity, circumstances, fear, doubt, and unbelief to eat up the egg, our psyche, and destroy us from the inside out. And when a predator eats an egg of a butterfly or an eagle, that egg exists no more. When a human egg or fetus is aborted, that egg exists no more. When the predators eat your psyche exists no more. Therefore, the you that you should become will exist no more. Who we really are is encased in a shell, the shell being our bodies. It is our mind, spirit, and soul that longs to be free and dares to believe. Our mind, spirit, and soul feeds our psyche and longs to be lifted by the wind and soar, and have come to understand that as a child, longing to fly was not a physical act I desired, but a spiritual act, something past the natural, something supernatural. The person that I really am, the beginning of me, the essence of me, lives within. I am mind, I am spirit, and I am soul. I was known to be me, my living soul in flight me, before I was even conceived, before my own physical being. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Genesis 2:7. Therefore, it is my mind, my spirit, and my soul that I must release to fly. that I must believe can fly. No, my physical body is not equipped to be lifted into the air unless I am in an aircraft. I am aware that my body has this limitation. But my mind, my spirit, my soul, which is the true me, my very being and essence of me, the beginning and continuation of me, has no limitations like my body, which is the shell that encases me. My mind, my spirit, my soul is free to fly, is free to will the good, the positive, but only if I believe, only if I have faith. If we truly come to understand ourselves in the essence of ourselves, our mind, our spirit, and our soul, and believe that we were made to fly and to soar, then and only then will we believe we can take flight and reach our destiny in life. No man can climb beyond the limitations of his own belief. Quote from Miles Monroe. The one thing grander than the sea is the sky. The one thing greater than the sky is the spirit of the human being. Quote from Anonymous. It is not your environment. It is not your history. It is not your education or ability. It is the quality of your mind that predicts your future. Quote Dr. Benjamin Mays. There is more in us than we know. If we can be made to see it, perhaps for the rest of our lives, we will be unwilling to settle for less. Quote Kurt Hahn. Now let's reflect on this chapter. If you do not know, ask someone, how was your actual birth? I was told the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck, which could have strangled and killed me. The doctor, instead of the nurse, was on standby to ensure I was delivered okay and was not in major distress inside my mother's womb. He became my protector during this process. It is amazing that the enemy will try anything to steal, kill, and destroy you in the very beginning. And guess what? The enemy only has an inkling, a hint of who you will become. The enemy knows you were chosen to do a great work in the earth. But once you really reflect on your beginning, not just your physical birth, but also the inner struggles present at birth and around you during your birth, you will have more than an inkling of the great work you have been chosen to do, as well as the possible obstacles you may have to overcome along the way. Reflect on what truly happened during your birthing process. Was there an emergency, urgency to deliver you? Did specialists have to confer before delivery? Were you breech? Did you come out gasping for air? Do not downplay or upplay what occurred. Recognize how it may have affected you spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically. Now reject those ugly feelings from that experience that has taken root. For instance, I feel strangled and gasp for air when I am distressed. I also clam up and do not speak when I need to express myself, tracing this back to my birth experience. I realized I did not choke or get strangled when I was born. The doctor worked through the problem and delivered me healthy. So you must command those ugly feelings that attached themselves to you to leave and release you because you survived. You were given the gift of life, and now you must fulfill your purpose and reach the destiny chosen specifically for you. Reassure the inner you that healing is in process and you will make it through and be thou healed. Receive the positive of that negative experience that was there. No matter how painful it was, there is something positive you can use to learn and grow. Now rejoice that you have been true to you and true to the experience. Now be thou revived to prepare to fly to the next level. From the beginning, beware of the predators who come to destroy. You have the power to destroy them before they destroy you. Just believe you can and have faith that you will. End of intro and chapter 1.